good luncheon. Today, 30 minutes of time, we'll be talking about cloud connectivities with two big gentlemen here. So before I start, let the two gentlemen here introduce themselves a bit.
Okay. My name is Thanasorn, Jaidee. Look after True Data Center or True IDC at the moment. The topic is about cloud and connectivities, right? So basically, in 2 minutes, True IDC we have the services on data center, local cloud, and international cloud. We partnership with AWS and others. So what we provide is to make sure that people have complete solution for their IT infrastructure. For example, one of our customers here, they have using all of that. We'll share you later today.
So let me ask, how many of you are not familiar with Jaidee? Anyone? Never heard of it before? Okay, in that case, hey, thanks. So Jaidee today, look, we do about 7 million uniques a month. I'm going to give you daily stats, probably better. 650,000 daily uniques a day. We do about 25, 30 million page views a day, 30 to 40,000 items listed for sale per day. And we work quite closely with True IDC because we have kind of a hybrid solution. So we've got our data center here locally in Thailand, and then we also work closely with AWS in Singapore, which handles most of our data. We talk more about that architecture and how we do it. But before I get there, let me ask the crowd, how many of you guys are either engineers, CTOs, infrastructure? Okay, so quite a few. How many of you are business trying to understand how cloud fits into my solution? Okay, so we've got a good mix. So we'll try to keep it not too deep into the technical side of it, but try to give more of an architectural overview of how this thing works, yeah?
Right, so before we go deeper, can you explain a bit on how do you actually start the journey of going to the cloud and how do you find True IDC?
Okay, so for us, we actually started our journey probably 2012, 2013. And we had always been kind of locally hosted, and we were starting to get into data and finding solutions for data. And one of the problems that we had when we were collecting data was, how do I scale this horizontally? And I can't afford to just keep buying server after server after server. And so we actually started off this journey actually with a competitor, which would have been Google. And we started having some problems there. So then we switched over to AWS. And so we started looking at using Redshift and things like that. To give you an idea of our data size, I mean, we're not massive in a global scale, but pretty big for Thailand. We collect about 100 gigs of data a day. That's excluding images. So this is just pure log file collection of data points. And so we needed to find something that could scale with us and that we could use, we needed Redshift basically. So what we do is if you look at our structure, we used to be just all locally here in the data center. We started off our data journey with a Microsoft suite. Then we kind of decided that that's not going to work for us. So then we started looking for other solutions. And that's how we ended up with AWS Redshift exposed through MicroStrategy today.
For non-technical audience, what's a Redshift?
Redshift is a data warehouse, basically. So it just is a place where we just store all of our data and just is collected there. So we shoot it up into what they call S3 buckets. It goes in here, and then that gets shifted over into Redshift, which is basically, for simplest of terms, one huge flat file, or looks like one massive Excel spreadsheet, basically.
Just to add, I think it's pretty aligned. We started the journey pretty much at the same time as Jaidee. When I first joined True IDC about 2 years ago, I was thinking that how we can address the markets on having both local on-premise, I would say on-premise, and local cloud, and also international cloud needs all come together in one place. So by doing so, we start partnership with a lot of people. One of them is AWS. So when we join AWS, it's very, very, I would say, painful partnership because AWS, basically when you buy AWS, right, you buy from through credit card. So in Thailand, we are probably the first that actually bring AWS in, and then you can actually pay using your corporate, like re-invoicing payment. So now when you come with us through IDC, you actually can get the invoice and claim the corporate tax, from AWS. And also we have a billing platform on AWS. we have a technology platform like Direct Connect, actually the one that helping Jaidee on connecting the local on-premise and this co-location to AWS cloud. And we also have our own local cloud, to address the local needs, both private and public sector. So we started that journey about 3 years ago, and now I would say we probably helping a lot of customers moving from their own local premise to cloud, especially on enterprise.
That's quite interesting as you're saying that you're not deploying 100% on cloud, but also you have like the kind of hybrid infrastructure here, right? So the next question would be, how do you actually architect the solution on where to put which component on-premise, local cloud, and the international cloud at AWS data center?
Maybe let me talk about why first. So we run our core platform at True Data Center, and the reason that that's important is because there's so much traffic, and to get the speed of response time that we need for our local clients in Thailand, we have to be located locally. If we went full cloud, I would have to buy a CDN, content delivery network. And if I buy a CDN, in the past, if you look at the last 3, 4, 5, even 10 years, the major CDNs around the world, whether you're looking at Limelight or Akamai, it would have cost me a fortune to get that service. And quite frankly, their service here in Thailand isn't good enough. They don't have enough nodes, endpoints, for me to really properly deliver my network fast enough. And in fact, if you look at the giants that say Google and Facebook, they have their own CDNs. They build that stuff out by themselves. So when I was looking at the solutions, our team was looking at solutions, not me personally, but our team was, we said, look, if we go over to AWS purely, or we go complete cloud, that's, say, in the AWS solution sitting in Singapore, the cost of connectivity back to Thailand would have been huge. So it actually becomes more, it's more efficient of capital deployment to actually purchase my service here locally. And in fact, we today run OpenStack. So we run our own virtual cloud platform in Thailand today. We actually just switched that over at the beginning of this year. Prior to this, we were running Zen, and prior to that, we were running VMware. We switched off of VMware because it was too expensive, went to Zen, and then Zen we actually had problems because in Zen we hit memory limitations. And when we contacted Citrix about it, Citrix said, yep, we know about that problem. And we said, are you going to fix it? And they said, nope, we can't. It's actually core to the system. We can't fix this. And yes, we know about that memory problem. So then we decided to go over to OpenStack. So we run OpenStack as our local virtual cloud. That's our own private cloud, per se. And then we have to decide which components to put up. Now, there's 2 components that we use that go to the cloud. So first is our data. So we actually have also our local data. Our local data is for our real-time stuff. So anything that's mission critical stays in our co-location in True. And so, for example, we use the Elk stack, so Elasticsearch into Kibana. So we use that, and that shoots into all of our real-time data sets that we actually need to be able to run our platform. And then for anything else, we shoot it up into the cloud. It has 3 buckets into Redshift, which is basically where we keep our data sets that are not mission critical. But for that, we don't need that direct connect. Because it's not mission critical, I can have latency in the way my data gets shot up there. So when do I need this piece? Is because of our chat platform. So on Jaidee today, when a buyer and seller wants to talk, the buyer initiates a chat with the seller. And we needed actually some horizontal scalability. We needed to be able to scale this thing out horizontally depending upon peak times that our chat application is being used. But that chat application is mission critical. And so therefore, we shoot it between here. It's actually using AWS for our chat application. So when buyer and seller talks, actually the data is flowing through AWS in Singapore. And so that piece is when we need the direct connect part of what they provide so that we have a dedicated line and we don't have the latency issues in the chat between buyer and seller.
That's, let me add some more things. Could you say that you put the local services on co-location, right? In True IDC, when we provide co-location services, we provide on our data center Currently now we have 4 locations. We're probably one of the largest co-location provider in Thailand now. We basically, what is that called? The carrier neutral data center, even though our name is True, right? But actually when you come to True IDC, you actually can connect to any provider. So basically any connectivity you choose can be connected to our data center. So that's that being said. Then when he has this requirement, we have our technology partnership with AWS called Direct Connect. Then we hook that local connectivity to Direct Connect, and then we provide a lot of like 10 times speed compared to local international connectivity, very secure peer-to-peer connectivity to AWS. Then in that case, you can store a lot of messages. You can store a lot of, I would say, do analytics and everything, and can push it back securely back to Thailand. And then you actually, of course, go to traditional local connectivity back to all the users here with very, very little interference or very good experience.
Just to give the audience a clear picture of what the scale that we're talking about, can you share some numbers that the workload or the flow that being pushed through the cloud right now?
So in terms of data collection, it's 100 gigs a day. But in terms of our chat, we send about 500,000 messages per day through our chat between buyers and sellers. The reason we still have the local platform is because of all the other things we need to do, which is the image serving, when an ad gets loaded, when somebody, when they're putting to something that they want to sell, or when the buyer is doing search here locally, and we have to serve the pages that people can see. At 30 million page views, there's quite a bit of data going down, back and forth, especially in images. So it's just the chat piece and the data piece that goes up into the cloud today.
So all the core functions resides inside your local cloud here, right? Okay, so that's another thing that's really, when people want to move to the cloud, we've got a lot of questions saying that, how do you actually handle outages of connectivities or outages of one of the component here? So at Jaidee, how do you encounter that at True IDC too? How do you make sure that there is no one single point of failure here?
This is when I call up True IDC. I say, how do we make sure that we don't have any outages?
Yes. Of course. That's very important to us because again, we are a carrier neutral data center, right? So our connectivity is not only from single provider. Of course, my name is True IDC. It's not only True, right? I mean, we have all the connectivities, from the leading provider from Thailand coming to our data center with the same price, basically treating all the same. That's how carrier neutral data center works. Then after that, for the Red Connect, it's very, very critical because Red Connect is using in multiple purpose, right? One of Head is messaging. The other one is using for the back office management. So they need to manage the back office very, very securely and very fast. So this is very important to them as well. So when we do, we also we want to make sure that we have redundancy providers, both media and also the provider of the Red Connect. Now we connected to Singapore and through two main providers. So we have two lines basically in the short term. And now we are actually investing on the third line, to hopefully assembling cable somewhere that we can actually connect even faster to AWS. So in that case, I'm sure that right now we are very, very safe, and also in the near future, hopefully by the end of the year, we probably have a third line connect to AWS as well.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about the back office piece of this. So for us, we have machine learning data pieces that we use. That when somebody comes in and posts an ad for sale, we actually have to check that ad to make sure that it's okay to go live. So we need to spot whether it's fraud, spam, illegal to post. So we actually have some machine learning components in our stack that sit up in the cloud. And so we also use Direct Connect for those. Now those aren't necessarily real-time data systems, but they need to be within a minute that we can respond back. So that includes my images. So we do shoot those over to these cloud systems that are doing machine learning on our platform to make sure that the ad has quality. But it doesn't have to have the response time that, say, my browsing or searches have to do when you're using the platform, but it has to have a decent response time for my sellers. And that's the other piece. I've forgotten about that when you mentioned it.
Okay. What about in terms of data privacy? How do you ensure that all the data stored inside the cloud and inside your local cloud actually comply to all the law and regulations here?
Okay, so first thing first, it's very intangible thing that people cannot touch and feel, right? So first thing we need to do is we need to ensure that we certify. You know, we have a strong certification with basically currently we have the ISO certification. You know, about 5 of them, including Cloud Security Association. We probably one of the 2 or 3 providers that actually have that. We actually have the highest one in Thailand. And also with data center, we also implementing the uptime certification. We actually the first one that actually certified uptime for provider. You know, we already certified the design one. The facility and operation is coming very soon also. So this can ensure that we have a good certification for that. And then we follow the certification on some of the service, for example. Very Connect is their service, right? So we are actually a certified technology partner of AWS to actually be able to provide Direct Connect to our customer. You know, so this is probably one of the things that we can ensure. And also another thing is, I cannot disclose, but some of the customers were sitting here as well. We have their services, very important sensitive information sitting in our data center, including financial services and also the some of the solutions actually using a lot of financial data sitting in our data center as well. So that's probably can ensure.
So I think at Jaidee you also process a lot of payments per day, right? So
No, well, we do, but that's in a different bucket. So in Jaidee, so we never facilitate the transaction between buyer and seller. Our transactions come from the seller side. So sellers purchase credits, what we call Jaidee eggs. They purchase credits from and then they use those credits to bump their ad or purchase a top ad space, which sits at the top of the place. And in those cases, there's data pieces that sits up in the cloud for sure. But in terms of the transaction piece, full disclosure, we use Omise as our payment gateway. But we also, a lot of that is transacted here in terms of the actual execution. But the data does sit up in AWS for sure, because that's how I can do my daily revenue reports and figure out who's spending what.
So you're doing report from Redshift, right?
Correct.
Daily
Data
reports.
MicroStrategy.
Wow.
Yeah, it runs all the time. I mean, we've basically updated every, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, I think, or every 3 to 5 minutes. Depends upon which system we're talking about in terms of our data processing.
Essentially real time, near real time.
Near real
That's
time,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, we use Elk Stack for a lot of our absolute real time stuff, but also up into MicroStrategy. It's a little bit slower, but for our financial stuff, it's updates in like 3 or 5 minutes, as fast as we possibly can. But in terms of that security piece, remember there's multiple layers to our stack in terms of security. There's the hardware and networking security piece. So we have our own set of firewalls, but of course we're talking AWS, this is world-class stuff, right? So when we do look at that, we do make sure that connectivity is secure. In doing so, when we had to do this direct connect and these types of features, where we're sending more critical information up, we actually had to work quite closely with their engineers to get it running correctly. It wasn't like we set it up and it just worked. We actually had to make it work with our own switches and our own co-location to understand it, yeah.
And what about in terms of cost? So let's say if you don't move to the cloud that day and you keep buying hardware, compared to this strategy, I think, can you share us the amount of cost in percentage or something that you can?
Yeah, look, I think cost is always on my mind, and purchasing servers is, I hate spending the money to purchase more servers, but when it's necessary, it's necessary. And I think from our point of view, we would rather go to the cloud where we don't have to take in the CapEx costs, and that we can scale at the points and peaks and times of our actual usage. So to give you guys an idea of like Jaidee, we peak our usage on our platform. It's not like we're consistent all day long. Actually, what happens is we peak the first time at 10 a.m. Traffic drops, we come up again at 3 p.m., higher, and then it drops again at 6 p.m., and then it peaks for the whole day. The absolute peak is at 9 p.m. And that's when we have our largest number of concurrents. And the concurrents that we can be running at a per minute concurrency at that time is 15, 18, 20,000 concurrents. And so when I buy my servers, remember my servers aren't pegged all day long. That means they're actually sitting there available from basically from 11 p.m. to 7 p.m. doing nothing. right? So I have a sunk cost there that I can't do anything about, right? So if I could take everything to the cloud, that would be ideal. And maybe I should talk about where we're planning to go. Because of this problem, we're looking at what we do next year. And so we're talking with True IDC at the moment to say, okay, what would be the cost if we went 100% cloud? How can I afford that? Well, things have changed. First of all, their costs have come down, so it's much cheaper to run now. The second one is CDNs in Thailand. There's some good solutions for CDNs today that have dropped the cost significantly. So we're currently in the analysis, my infrastructure team with his team are trying to figure out, okay, what's the cost of us our colo sitting here in Thailand and hosting that stuff here, or lifting it to the cloud to understand the cost difference. In prior years, it was impossible. The cost of AWS was astronomical compared to what I could buy locally. But this year, it's just now, it's starting to change, right?
Yes. So I think, let me add one more aspect here. So basically, for look at the usage, right? Like Tiwa mentioned, it's also a good thing that you can actually save in cost, right? But when you look at the financial, some organizations, they don't want to pay OpEx, to be honest. So sometimes the buying equipment locally is also addressing their needs as well, right? So we have many type of customers. Well, some customers say, you know what, I want hybrid because I want to spend some of the capex, so our book is looking good. But we want our services like, you know, online services and something that you need a lot of variable actually using cloud, right? So that being said, so our objective is basically make sure that we have a right fit of the solution to the customer. So in that case, you know, I can share some, I would say, some target numbers that we actually plan for working with Jaidee to actually help in debt saving costs. We're looking at a certain number of about 20-30% of saving some costs there. It means to IDC. What does that mean to IDC? Basically,
That's before discount. Right?
Yeah. so basically, it means what is that the billing from Jaidee to us is actually reducing, meaning we earn less money. You know, but actually it's better for customers who are actually having a better performance to cloud. Because I think for Jaidee business, it makes sense to move everything to cloud, you know, in terms of e-commerce and everything. But on the other hand, you know, we have a customer there that, you know, I don't want to move to cloud, right? Because it's very workload stable. You know, I have no issue about my cash, but I need my EBITDA to be very beautiful. So it's just gonna go with perfect thing. So it depends. But on the target side, I mean, helping Jaidee saving some costs is our target for next year.
Let me talk about that. I mean, that's a good point, because sometimes the KPIs are set such that you're looking at an EBITDA line. For me, I'm looking at trading loss line. I don't care about my trading profit, or right now still trading loss, guys. That's the line I care about. So whether it sits between OpEx or CapEx, I'm not so worried about it. The other cost that you're saving here is that I don't, you know, the amount of time and energy that we have to spend on maintaining our colos versus what we can depend upon AWS to maintain for me. There's a cost shift there. And so therefore, then my team that sits in infrastructure can then work on different things. And they can work on more interesting things that are more about driving my business into the future, rather than having to spend their time maintaining servers and networking equipment, which quite frankly is a waste of their time.
I think we have time for one more question. So I think the last question would be, how do you see the industry of cloud computing goes in like 3 to 5 years, given that there's a lot of technologies that comes up, cloud computing, AI, machine learning, and Jaidee point of view and True IDC point of view?
I can go first. So I think it's, from us as a strategy point of view, it's extremely important to look at how cloud technology can grow with us in terms of our horizontal scaling of our data. So we've now employed, we have two bits of actual machine learning running at the moment. One is on premise, and that's our image recognition pieces. And we run a couple GPUs to do that. We bought those GPUs. So today, if we want to scale out our data, our image recognition piece, we're trying to figure that out, because quite frankly, I can't afford to buy another 10 GPUs to support it. Whereas if I go to AWS, I can suddenly scale this out. So it's those, where I see this thing really making impact is when we talk about AI and machine learning. To do this properly, you have to be able to scale really fast. Where AWS and these cloud solutions come in is they already have the hardware, they've invested in the hardware. Now they just need customers like us to actually employ that hardware to maximum usage, because they've got tons of computing power sitting there waiting for us. We've got tons of data. What we need to figure out is how do we put that data to use without being worried about my hardware. And so I would, like I said, I'd rather my team be spending their time trying to figure that out than maintaining servers and things like that.
Yeah, it's just my point of view is that last 2 years we target that people will actually start using cloud in the next year or two, but we see it's a lot faster. But now I see a lot of shifting. People was looking at all cloud, all in cloud, right? But recently we see a lot of change. You see that people actually start pulling back some of their workload back to the local. And the reason being is that when they move everything to cloud, they realize that actually everything not need to be in cloud. Meaning some of that can be on premise, some of that can be on cloud, and the best optimized way is using hybrid cloud in some way or the other, and connectivity is very good part of it, right? So now I think the whole idea of cloud in the future is that how we can actually make sure that we have a good mix of the solution as we can address the needs of all the customers. For example, like Jaidee, right? They need all cloud, we have all cloud, we have direct connect. Some of them they need on-premise cloud. I would say on-premise cloud, meaning that our cloud connect to AWS, or some of them they need the CAPEX, like co-location and connect to AWS. So all this will happen, in the near future, and we see that trend already. We see our customers move some workload back already from their leading cloud provider because of, they realize, it's not actually, not everything needs to be in cloud. We need to help them optimize it somehow.
Thank you for your answer. I think we ran out the question time, so right now we are going into the Q&A session. So if anybody had any question about cloud computing, you can raise your hand. Yes, please.
Hi, I have two questions. I think one is that you talk a lot about AWS now. Have you ever done a comparison, with Azure, for example, both from the ID perspective and True? That's the first one. And the second one, and the second question that I have is that I think, based on the system architecture that you have, it seems, makes sense that, if True were to have some service like infrastructure as a service, but as a local layer, it seems like it seems like a sweet spot or something like that. So the question more for True, isn't it something that True would explore more on? And I think that I heard, investment in, the SuperNet and blah, 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 is there gonna be infrastructure as a service, in Thailand, hosted locally? So, thank you.
Let me answer first. Okay. The comparison between Azure and AWS, probably not a good conversation we should have. But anyway, we are both of them are partners. We simply can actually sell AWS, and also we have a cloud service provider license with Azure and Office 365 also. But what we see, because our customer from the last 2 years is more like e-commerce, and the person they're actually using a lot of workload like Jaidee, right? So we position AWS to the customer more than Azure, So but what we see is that some of the customers who actually they are all enterprise, they're using Microsoft stacks already in-house, so Azure actually somewhat fit with their requirement as well. So they need to change their in-house resources or in-house skill set and everything, so they can move to Azure very easily. So that I cannot say that financially how they can compare. I think it's a lot of comparison on the internet that you can actually go look at it. But it's what I can say is that it's depend on the objective of using it.
I can tell you why we use AWS. I actually am a fan of Azure, but it's because of the stack that we run in terms of our platform stack, and also because of the familiarity that my team has. So it's just easier for us, but that doesn't mean our solution is the right one for somebody else. Like if you're a Microsoft shop run with Azure, it's a great product. If you're considering between the two, there's a lot of people that are running Linux on Azure very successfully and doing great, and I totally support that. I don't think it's one or the other analysis. I think you probably have to look at the cost and also your team's skill set. And so my team just happens to be more familiar with AWS.
Just that's the second question. We actually have an IaaS in-house also, but it's more like hosted private cloud. Targeted specifically for some customer. We also open for the customer to actually host it on our local cloud. So the answer is yes, we have IaaS, but we have the we started to put some investment to make sure that we have a better IaaS. To be honest, so something like more compatible with the internet cloud. And eventually, we want to be more like a hybrid and also a cloud exchange in the near future. A cloud exchange. Yeah, so basically anyone can be anywhere. We can actually help you move from AWS, Azure, local cloud, anything. So that's how we want to be. Because eventually people will not put their resources on one cloud anyway in the near future. So we need to be a middleman to make sure that we help them manage on any cloud they want. That's our philosophy in the future.
So is it needing cloud exchange to be like a broker kind of?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, right? Broker and also the consulting managed service as well. Because right now, what we invest in house is basically the platform that we can handle multiple clouds at once. But I cannot tell you in more detail. But let's see in the future how we can come up with that.
Okay, so I think we've run out of time, but anyway, thank you, Kun Thanasorn and Kun Tiwa, for the session. You guys will still be here, right? So if anybody has any more questions, we can have a discussion off stage. And thank you for today.
Yeah, and also if you guys can't find me, one of my senior architects is standing right here. Raise your hands. Golf is sitting right here, so he can also answer a lot of questions about how we do it at least. Sure.
Thank you very much. Mr.
Thank you.